All right, good afternoon. We are delighted to be joined by our colleague, Assistant Secretary General Sanda Ojiambo, who, as you know, is the head of the UN Global Compact. She's here to preview the flagship event during the high-level week called Global African Business Initiative. I won't say any more because you're going to say it. So go ahead, Sanda, please.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much, Steph, and thank you for all of you for joining here present and also virtually. It's really an honor to be here today to talk about the Global Africa Business Initiative, and really looking forward to having you all join us, either virtually or in person, for our flagship event that's called Unstoppable Africa. And it's going to be held as part of the UN General Assembly events on Sunday 21 and Monday 22 September. As you know, and Steph talks about this all the time, this is a significant moment. For Africa specifically, Africa's voice in the global economy continues to grow stronger, and the world is watching with interest. It's a time of global disruption, as we know. Trade tensions are rising, supply chains are shifting, the battle for critical minerals is escalating, and economic uncertainty is certainly shaping how markets, including African markets, are operating. We see this as a moment of immense opportunity. It's the opportunity to shift the narrative of doing business in Africa to doing business with Africa. It's an opportunity to look at the SG's continued call around the structures that limit access to finance for African economies so that they can develop infrastructure, industrialize, build markets, and trade goods on fair terms. It's the opportunity to build resilience for African economies, but also to demonstrate that Africa has the solution for energy transitions, for climate action, for food security, for consumer markets, for critical minerals, and for digital transformation. So I come here today to really position our Unstoppable Africa as a story of progress, partnership, and possibility. The disruptions I talked about earlier are not cautionary tales, they're realities. We've seen African economies stumble, shift their perspectives once global economy moves and lines are redrawn. Africa must not only adapt, it has to lead. And that's why the Global Africa Business Initiative exists. Launched in 2022 with a clear goal, as I said, to change how the world views Africa and does business with Africa. Global Africa Business Initiative is convened by the United Nations and the African Union, and the UN Global Compact, which I lead, has the honor of coordinating and organizing its activities across the UN General Assembly Week and throughout the rest of the year when we gather on the African continent. Our mission is fourfold. First of all, to convene global and African stakeholders, private sector leaders and political leaders, to connect private sector leaders with investors and global partners, to catalyze collaboration, partnership, and business for sustainable growth, and to deliver on the African Union Agenda 2063 and the SDGs. Since its launch, our flagship event that we hold every General Assembly, Unstoppable Africa, has welcomed over 8,000 participants, including over 15 heads of state and business leaders, investors, artists, academics, and UN leaders. It has fast become the premier platform where African business, investment, and trade leaders meet the world and vice versa. We're excited to announce the fourth edition of Unstoppable Africa, as I said, co-convened by the United Nations and the African Union and organized by the UN Global Compact. It will take place on Sunday 21 and Monday 22 September at the Marriott Marquis Hotel in New York. The biggest themes that we're going to tackle this year, the overall theme is the big push, how Africa shapes markets. We're going to tackle a few critical topics: building African-led global trade, investment, and business partnerships, maximizing the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement for trade and value chains, strengthening digital technology and innovation, positioning Africa as a global investment hub, and supporting the sports and the creative sectors. Pleased to confirm already the participation of 4 heads of state: President Lorenzo of Angola, President Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah of Namibia, President Duma Boko of Botswana, President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone, President Faye of Senegal, many others are joining as well. We have close to 100 captains of industry, creative and sports icons who are there to tell a renewed story by Africa and for Africa. To the media present, your role is crucial. Every day in your reporting, you tell the story of Africa's challenges. There's also a story of Africa's progress that you tell. We want to elevate that and amplify that. It's a story of innovation, resilience, and ambition. And we ask you to report on the strides made in building renewable energy access, scaling up digital and technology innovations, making the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement work for Africa, building an infrastructure to harness the robust creative and sports industry. So as we count down to September 21, I invite you to stay engaged, share the journey, and join us at the Marriot Marquis for our event. For those who are not able to attend in person, you may also attend virtually. The dialogue will be dynamic. The action will continue beyond the UN General Assembly Week in partnership with the AU, the Africa CEO Forum, and all of our captains of industry from around the world. Thank you very much, and I'm open to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll start with Edie.
Thank you very much, Sandra. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing, my name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. You're talking about unstoppable Africa, but taking a slightly negative view, Africa is still a very divided continent with quite a number of countries engaged in conflicts of various sorts. Is there an effort at this meeting to try and ensure participation by every African country? And what actually do you think that the kinds of business, global government partnerships can do to promote a more peaceful continent? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for that really pertinent question. Look, I mean, conflict, instability exists all around the world. I think what we want to, highlight with Unstoppable Africa is the fact that the private sector continues to remain robust, even where there is conflict and strife. Business will still continue. And I think, one of the strongest messages that we hear from African private sector leaders is African political leaders is oftentimes the private sector exists and continues to help almost de-risk, provide an environment of safety, calling for investment, and also just demonstrating that people will still need the goods and the services that are provided. So, if you looked at any of the economies that are in conflict right now, there's still an active and vibrant private sector. What does private sector, on the flip side, ask of government? They're asking for peace and stability. They're ready to invest in it because they know that social cohesion builds your workforce, allows you to sell your goods and services. That is the first. The second is that private sector knows that economy needs to grow. And with strong economies, then you also bring a much stronger chance for political stability. So there's a very symbiotic relationship between the political environment and economic growth. It is challenging because it's not perfect everywhere. Where we've often found some of the highest level of conflict is where there is the richest resource of resources, be they critical minerals, be it arable, agriculture, land, etc. We're trying to change that and shift really the importance of private sector in these economies, but also the importance of things like job creation, because when young people are employed, there's less chance that they'll be radicalized, that they'll feel like they're idle, that they'll feel they want to join forces that aren't supportive, for economic and political growth. We're also trying to make sure that industries can flourish, that Africans can be involved in value addition, even where there is, important resources that get exported. So yes, there are challenges. We're not running away from those. There are significant challenges: political strife, illicit financial flows, challenges around governance. But there's a strong and robust private sector, and that's what all of those leaders are here to talk about: the need to really build that infrastructure for private sector to grow. The criticality really is the opportunity that we have to recognize Africa's availability to solve for world problems in food security, in energy security, and in digital transformation. So that's really the positioning and the problem that we really want to solve.
Thank you, Pam, and then Evelyn.
Thank you, ASG, and for your very optimistic view of what's next. I looked at the Unstoppable Africa site. It's very impressive. Is there a way to get a little more granularity on investments in Africa, the one kind of ones you're talking about? Mm-hmm. The captains of industry you mentioned are principally regional, but there are a lot of global companies in Africa. Any chance of getting sort of those micro numbers or macro numbers even on who's inside Africa to get a sense of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do hope that you'll join
different
us on the
country.
day. I don't want to let all of the cat out of the bag, right? Part of this is to get you there. But to be honest, and if you go back on the site, you'll see some of the successes that we had last year and over the years. For example, we've had close to, I think, 5 or 6 heads of state talk about their commitment to energy compacts, to investing in energy infrastructure and the types, and they've talked about the quantums of financing that they're bringing to bear. A lot of this rests on Mission 300 that has an ambition to bring electricity to 300 million Africans who are without electricity there. We've heard about investments in digital connectivity. A couple of companies in the last year talked about investing in sort of digital infrastructure zones to grow that. We've heard about investments in sports and investments in the creative industry. Those are all on the site. What you can look forward to, and I promise I'm not going to tell you everything, is significant investments continuously in building digital infrastructure. Some of these are African and global partnerships. You're going to also hear about investments in food security. Off the back of the Food Systems Summit a couple of months ago that was held in Addis, significant global and African partnerships are emerging. You'll also hear about investments that are going to happen in trade, in health systems, and a broad range of areas. And those will continue to be updated on the site. What we are doing with these announcements and what we will do during Unstoppable Africa is, first of all, because we want to be accountable, talk about progress on the past commitments and announcements, but also announce a few others coming forward. So you will get a sense of the amount of market cap that's in the room from these African leaders, a sense of their supply chains, a sense of, the businesses that they're carrying along, and we'll match that with the global investors and partners who are there.
If I can just follow up, if I understand you, they will be talking about the last things you were talking about.
Yes.
But are you also looking for announcements of new investments?
Certainly, yes. There
And-
are announcements
I
coming
see.
up. There are. I just
All right.
can't tell you them now, otherwise there won't be announcements, right?
Well, any teasers will be helpful.
As I said, if I was to tease a little bit, there's going to be some big digital technology announcements. I anticipate announcements in food systems, announcements around health as well, which is so critical for, a strong economy. And there will possibly be some announcements around the creative industry. So they'll span the gamut. Are you registered?
Very helpful.
We'll get you registered.
Evelyn?
Thank you for the briefing. Evelyn Leopold, Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. Many decades ago, I was the Reuters manager for Africa. And the one thing I learned is that Africa is not a country.
Indeed.
And the difference from north to south, from east to west, is enormous. When you give your analysis, can you distinguish by countries or at least by area? Because otherwise people will think Africa is a country, which you and I know it is
not.
That's not.
Certainly so, and I wish I don't have the statistics here. We're going to put them up on the site so you actually see the breadth of representation that Unstoppable Africa is bringing on September 21 and 22. So we have representatives from, I'd want to say, pretty much all areas of the continent, north, south, east, west, and central. So important. If I think about also the issues that are coming to bear, from North Africa, we're hearing a lot about the investments already put into renewable energy. A lot of North Africa is exporting already clean green energy to Europe. That's a fact. East Africa continuing to be a hub and an area for mobile telephony, financial inclusion, etc. Southern Africa also looking at a lot of key innovation, driving creative industry, driving digital and others. West Africa, again, creative industries, the hubs. Central Africa, lots of agriculture, but also sort of the home for a lot of the critical minerals that the continent has. So, we're very clear that there is a nuanced view to the continent. It's certainly not, one country. That is a very clear narrative. But also the world trades with Africa and the different regions of Africa in different ways. There's a lot of work to do around harmony and harmonization, both of tariffs and trade between countries and also between these various countries and the world. So the AFCFTA plays a central role in that narrative. But you'll see we're going to have conversations in English, in French, in Portuguese, lots of, diversity in the African continent and lots of diversity as well in its culture, sports, and you'll see that on the day. definitely not one country.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much for the briefing and all the wonderful work you do. My name is Ahmed Ali with Sphinx News TV. As you noted, the Global African Business Initiative seeks to promote partnership and opportunity across Africa. Since 2022, as you are probably well aware of, Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traore, has advanced an anti-Western revolution with a narrative that echoes themes of Pan-Africanism and economic cooperation among local governments. My question to you is, how does GABI view such anti-Western movements, and in your professional capacity, do you believe they support the initiatives GABI aims to achieve in the long term? Thank you.
Well, look, I mean, GABI, first of all, is private sector led. You know, in all of the economies that you've talked about, what we put at the center is the private sector. And what I hear from private sector leaders, most of all, is what they want is stability, predictability, the ability to do business, trade, and also to attract investment. So what we'll see at GABI is not so much, you know, where Africa lies politically, or, you know, it's not a tussle between sides. It's really about how do we grow economies and what makes the best sense for economies at the stage that they are. You know, I think a lot of our discussions that we've had, even where there is civil and political strife, have really focused on what do you need to have a cohesive and strong business environment, because without a robust economy, countries cannot thrive. And so that's where we put our effort and our focus in Unstoppable Africa. As I said earlier, we don't do this you know, in ignorance of larger political forces, but we do this understanding that the private sector is so critical to overcome a lot of the challenges that we see that play out in the political sphere as well.
Yes, please.
Yes, hi. My name is Eva Ramelow. I work for a bunch of Dutch language media. So development, economic development is often hindered and held up by human rights. Human rights standards. Are those human rights, in your view, up for discussion? Is there sometimes you need to prioritize certain rights over others? How do you view that from your point of view?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and this is really at the bedrock of some of the work that the UN Global Compact does. At our heart, we are a sustainability organization, and we work with businesses to advance principles around human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. That is, you know, the space in which we work. All of our discussions will take certain elements into consideration. I mean, there's key issues, as we say right now, around supply chains, transparency within them, workers' rights, how workers are treated, and across a wide range of industries, rights to be able to also have a job, a well-paying job, and to be able to have a workplace that is dignified. And so we address all of those with our businesses. A lot of our businesses are highly advanced and, you know, operate at par to many other businesses around the world. But I think what is really important, and this lesson actually is more for multinationals who come to do business, as we say, in Africa, not with Africa, is how you then treat your offshore business interests on the continent, because that's where often people want to take advantage of possibly lower wage rates, differing work circumstances, you know, not looking properly at workers' legislation. And it's important, and our call to businesses that do business with Africa is they must respect the same high standard and regard for rights. There's also rights around things such as value addition and export, and what we do to promote countries' continued, I'm going to use the word exploitation of its resources. So we look at it from that angle, really. You know, businesses must be fair to workers around the world. Where we see violations, frankly, is where people use the continent to offshore, to dump, to treat, you know, the African economy in a different way. And that's why we insist that Africa must be at the table. And it's about doing business with Africa and not in Africa.
Thank you very much. Sandra, thank you so much. We look forward to an exciting outcome
Thank you.
of the
Thank
meeting.
you so
And,
much.
and the Secretary General, of course, will be
Yes,
there.
and the SG will be
be
there
there.
along with the African Union
Exactly.
Chairperson and
Yeah.
many other captains of industry.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you.